Hey guys, tonight we're taking a moonlit stroll down one of history's grimmiest boulevards, the Black Death. Yes, that one. Rats, boils, and hygiene advice straight out of a nightmare. But tonight, we're focusing on a question so absurd, it might just keep you up. Why did medieval people, during one of the worst pandemics in human history, absolutely, stubbornly, refused to take a bath? Was it the drafty bathhouses? The price of medieval soap? Or was it something deeper, like a terror of water molecules breaking and entering through their pores? Before we get into why everyone's great-great-great-grandparents preferred a protective crust of medieval filth, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy drifting off to tales of human resilience, bad medical advice, and personal aromas strong enough to earn their own coat of arms. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and, honestly, how long it's been since your last bath. No judgment. This is a safe space for night owls, insomniacs, people hiding from their own laundry. Now, dim those lights, put a fan on for background ambience, and settle in. Pull the covers tight. Imagine you're not alone. In fact, you're huddled up in a 14th century one-room cottage next to your livestock, your in-laws, and a pungent cloud of older-timey body spray. Let's ponder the real questions. Have you ever wondered what it feels like to go weeks or months without a bath, while everyone around you is doing the same? Could you have survived the plague with nothing but onion soup and an unwavering faith in the healing power of dirt? Would you risk your life just for a quick rinse? Or would you embrace your inner biohazard and call it self-care? What did people think would happen if you washed your hair more than once a year? Could bathing actually kill you? Or worse, make your neighbors suspicious? Congratulations. You've just woken up in 1348. The air is thick with rumors, bad science, and something else you can't quite identify. Good luck. And please don't forget to breathe through your mouth. It's the spring of 1348. And congratulations, you're alive, you have all your limbs, and, as of this morning, only a moderate rash. But something's off. The neighbors are panicking, the church bells are tolling overtime, and the local bathhouse has just chained its doors until further notice. You're not sure what the notice is, but it definitely smells like trouble. You step outside your one-room cottage, squinting into the pale sun, and realize the street is quieter than usual. The town crier, a man famous for waking up half the county every morning, is running up and down the lane with a wild look in his eye, yelling something about pestilence, God's wrath, and the urgent need to avoid your neighbor's cat. You think he's exaggerating, until you spot old Marjorie, the toughest woman in the village, scrubbing her doorstep with vinegar and muttering prayers in 3 languages. By noon, the rumors had spread faster than the actual plague. You hear that it came from the rats, or maybe from the foreigners, or possibly the cheese merchant with the suspicious cough. The truth is, nobody knows. What everyone does know is that people are suddenly, alarmingly afraid to touch, talk, or even look at each other for too long. You wave at your friend Tom, but he bolts his door and yells something about protecting his paws. Fair enough. You try to go about your usual routine, maybe buy some turnips, gossip about the miller's new haircut, and if you're feeling truly wild, sneak a peek at the baker's daughter. But now, every interaction comes with a side of fear. At the market, instead of haggling over onions, people are arguing about which direction the wind is blowing, and whether or not that's a plague cloud on the horizon. Someone sneezes, and 3 people run for cover. But the real shock comes when you stroll down to the bathhouse, hoping for a rare soak or just a chance to hear the latest village scandals through a cloud of steam. The doors are padlocked. A sign flaps in the breeze. Warning, closed to prevent the spread of the pestilence, by order of the magistrate. You're not sure whether to be disappointed or relieved. On one hand, that's your only chance to rinse off the week-old sweat. On the other hand, you're suddenly convinced your pores are basically open front doors for any passing germs. The sudden ban on bathing sends the whole town into a frenzy. Some people are convinced this is the best medical advice since eat more onions. Others are furious, convinced that if they can't wash, the plague will simply find another way in, through their feet, maybe, or their slightly judgmental eyebrows. The local priest offers spiritual comfort, telling everyone that God will protect the faithful, especially those who avoid public nudity. It's a strange, new world, and you're not sure you like it. You head back home, hugging your elbows tight. As the rumors and church bells keep clanging, a neighbor stands on her doorstep shaking a handful of garlic at passing children, while the village herbalist is doing a brisk business selling little cloth sachets of something that smells like burnt feet. The whole street is a mashup of panic, superstition, and the kind of neighborly suspicion usually reserved for disputes about fence lines. By nightfall, the real symptoms start appearing. Someone's cousin develops mysterious lumps under their arm. The midwife refuses to visit unless you leave payment on the doorstep and stay at least 2 geese lengths away. The only people moving freely are the rats, who look disturbingly smug. And yet, through the absurdity and the fear, there's a strange sense of togetherness. You find yourself sharing stale bread and whispered gossip with neighbors you never noticed before. You all try not to scratch your rashes in public. You promise yourself you'll never take a bath for granted again. But for now, you wait, uncertain and unwashed, as history crashes through your little village in the form of invisible, terrifying doom. You can't make this up. In 1348, the safest thing you can do is stay home, avoid the soap, and hope your pores are as stubborn as you are. Sleep tight, if you can. Before the plague, bathhouses were the social media of the Middle Ages. Everyone went, everyone gossiped, and, yes, sometimes things got a little steamy. Now, they're shut tight, blamed for everything from the Black Death to questionable romantic choices. Turns out, nothing clears out a sauna like a rumor that the Grim Reaper is offering exfoliation treatments. Imagine you're wandering through your bustling medieval town. Maybe you've spent the morning laboring in the fields, or perhaps you've survived another round of pottage that tastes like regret. In the center of it all stands the public bathhouse, a place where peasants and merchants, gossipy widows, and even the occasional knight with chronic helmet hair all gather for a rare luxury. A hot soak. The air is thick with steam, secrets, and the faint hope that you'll finally be less itchy than your livestock. Someone is singing off-key, someone else is complaining about taxes, and everyone pretends not to notice the suspiciously high number of accidental towel drops. The bathhouse isn't just about hygiene. It's the community news hub. Want to know who's in debt, who's expecting, or who borrowed the miller's goat last Sunday? Just hang out in the steam room for 20 minutes and you'll learn more than you ever wanted. People even bring snacks. Bread, cheese, maybe a jug of weak ale. It's basically a spa day meets awkward office party. And in a world without phones, TV, or cat videos, this is peak entertainment. But now, in the shadow of the plague, everything's different. The windows are boarded up. The once busy benches are empty, and the only thing soaking is the pile of rumors out in the street. You hear the bathhouse is where it started, whispers one neighbor. My cousin's friend swears he saw a boil the size of a plum on the bath attendant's elbow. The town's doctors, armed with questionable diplomas and even more questionable facial hair, issue warnings about hot vapors and bad airs that somehow collect only in places people go to clean up. Suddenly, bathhouse regulars are treated like walking outbreaks. If you so much as mention missing your weekly soak, someone eyes you like you've just confessed to eating raw rat for breakfast. The local authorities, who, let's be honest, mostly just like shutting things down, slap a notice on the door, closed, by order of the magistrate, wash at your own risk, preferably don't. You're left to contemplate whether you're cleaner or just a little lonelier. Of course, not everyone is upset. Some are quietly thrilled. The town prude celebrates the return of modesty. Finally, people will stop parading around in nothing but a scrap of linen and a bad attitude, she crows. Others, especially the local perfume sellers, see a business opportunity. With the bathhouse closed, suddenly everyone's in the market for lavender water, rosemary sachets, and whatever that one vendor swears is guaranteed to keep the spirits away. It's just mashed turnip. Even the church gets involved, muttering that bathhouses were dens of sin and suspiciously high spirits anyway. Good riddance, says Father Bernard, though even he looks wistfully at the locked door, remembering the pre-plague days when he'd eavesdrop on the congregation in the changing room and solve at least half his parish's mysteries before Sunday. And yet, even as bathhouses become public enemy number one, people are quietly miserable. Your skin is crawling. Your hair is stiffer than your morals. And even your dog seems offended by your personal cloud of eau de medieval funk. Worse, you miss the warmth, the chatter, the minor escapism of a hot bath. Nobody really wants to be dirty, but self-preservation wins over comfort every time. By midsummer, the bathhouses are gathering dust and resentment in equal measure. A few brave souls whisper about secret washing sessions at the river. These are risky, outlaw affairs, complete with lookouts and a network of code words. The turnips are in season means it's safe to sneak a rinse. If you're caught, you feign innocence and claim you slipped in while gathering herbs. And so, the bathhouse, once the beating, bubbly heart of medieval social life, fades into memory. Its echo remains in the empty street, in the idle gossip, and, unfortunately, in the growing cloud of collective body odor that not even the strongest rosemary can mask. You can't make this up. In a world desperate for survival, the cleanest place in town became the most suspicious. And you? You're left to long for the old days, when a bath was just a bath, not a death wish or a scandal. In the rare case you decide to wash, you'll need soap, if you can afford it, made from lye, animal fat, and the faint hope that it won't melt your skin off. Medieval soap is so rare it's basically a luxury item, and that's if you can find someone who isn't convinced soap itself is the vector of doom. Picture this. You stand in the shadowy corner of the market, clutching a coin and trying to look casual. It's not a black market deal for forbidden fruit or heretical books. No, you're in search of something far more scandalous, a chunk of soap. The soap merchant, hunched and mysterious, slides out from behind a barrel and offers you a lumpy, greyish brick that looks more like something you'd throw at an invading army than lather up within the tub. You hesitate. It's expensive, almost as much as a decent loaf of bread or 2 good onions. But it promises, or at least threatens, to banish a week's worth of dirt and 2 months' worth of medieval regrets. You squint at the ingredients list, which is really just a knowing nod, and the words, "Trust me," lye, animal fat, and sometimes a dash of ashes or mysterious local herbs for scent. The last time you bought soap, it dissolved the wash basin. The time before that, it ate a hole in your favorite shirt. But hope springs eternal, and so does body odor. Soap, if you're lucky enough to have it, is less a hygiene product and more a status symbol. The wealthy display their soap with pride, as if to say, "Look at me. I could wash any time I want." They keep it locked up with the silverware. Meanwhile, most peasants resort to the old standbys: sand, ashes, and raw enthusiasm. Some folks just rub themselves with a slightly damp cloth and call it rustic exfoliation. After all, why bother risking the wrath of your local herbalist, who swears that real cleanliness lets the bad airs inside? And there's more. Some people are convinced that using soap is an open invitation for disaster. Soap opens your pores, warns your neighbor, shaking her head. Next thing you know, you're coughing up frogs. If you want to start a riot, just mention you've been washing with imported Castile soap from Spain. Suddenly you're an outsider, a witch, or at the very least, someone with suspiciously shiny hands. For those brave enough to make their own soap, the process is explosive in every sense. First, you need lye. That's made by running water through wood ash and collecting the resulting caustic sludge, which can burn holes in anything from your skin to your dignity. Next, you add animal fat, usually whatever's left over from butchering season, mixed with hopes, dreams, and a quick prayer. You heat the mixture over a smoky fire. Stir until it smells just right, or at least bearable, and hope you don't blow up the kitchen. If you're lucky, what you're left with is soap. If you're unlucky, you're left with a medieval fire hazard and a lifelong distrust of chemistry. The scent of medieval soap is an experience. Sometimes it's floral, if someone's thrown in lavender or rosemary. Sometimes it's just extra beefy. The best you can hope for is that it covers, rather than combines with, the smell you started with. Washing with it is an act of courage. You rub the gritty bar across your skin and wonder if you'll emerge cleaner or simply less structurally sound. In a world where soap is a luxury and superstition is law, even the cleanest people are suspect. Some towns even ban soap altogether during plague outbreaks. After all, it's better to be safely crusty than risk letting in the bad spirits. You look at your prized soap, contemplate the risk, and wonder if it's worth being the village outcast with dazzlingly smooth elbows. Ultimately, you stash the soap in a safe spot, to be used only for high holidays, unexpected in-law visits, or your own funeral preparations. Most of the time, you settle for a little splash of water and a lot of hope, because in plague-era Europe, staying dirty is the new clean. You can't make this up. Sometimes, survival means keeping your pores and your soap firmly under lock and key. Somewhere along the line, water went from being the staff of life to a suspicious, disease-ridden accomplice. Town criers warn, bathing opens your pores to the air, let the plague right in. Suddenly, every trickle, bucket, and puddle is eyed like it's plotting something sinister. It's a strange reversal of fortune for the world's most basic resource. Last year, you could splash river water on your face and call it morning rejuvenation. This year, water is basically a medieval supervillain, possibly in league with rats, cats, and anyone who doesn't look properly paranoid. You stand by the well, eyeing your reflection, and consider just how risky it would be to rinse the turnip stains off your hands. Is that a ripple in the bucket, or a sign of the apocalypse? You never know. The rumors spread faster than the plague itself. Some say the water is cursed. Others are convinced it's teeming with invisible plague vapors that sneak through your skin the moment you wash off your protective layer of grime. A medieval scientist, meaning a guy with a beard and a strong opinion, explains that evil humors hide in water. He waves a stick at the village children and tells them to keep their distance from puddles, or they'll wake up with purple spots. Nobody questions him, because he's read 2 books and owns a hat. And so, what was once a symbol of purity and renewal is now just another hazard to be avoided, like untied shoes or talking back to the priest. Children are warned. Don't get your feet wet, or you'll die before supper. The neighbor who used to boast about her spotless linen now quietly layers on another tunic, trying to blend in with the rest of the strategically unwashed. Even the family dog, once famous for chasing ducks into the pond, now gives water bowls a suspicious sniff before drinking. Fetching water for daily use is suddenly a tactical operation. You avoid the public fountain unless you want to be accused of inviting death to dinner. The old men who once played dice by the riverbank now gossip about which houses look too clean for comfort. If someone's hair is a little too shiny, if their skin isn't as delightfully crusty as everyone else's, it's grounds for suspicion. Did you hear? Agnes washed her feet last week. Now her cousin's sick. The logic is airtight. Cleanliness is next to plague. Leanness. Inside your own home, the water barrel has become a forbidden zone. The only acceptable use for water is adding it to soup, which you will then boil until it's less of a liquid and more of a thick existential crisis. A splash for washing hands before dinner, only if you want your mother-in-law to make the sign of the cross and move her bowl to the other end of the table. And good luck if you accidentally get caught in the rain. Umbrellas haven't been invented, but running home, flapping your cloak like a terrified chicken, is the only acceptable response. Otherwise, people might assume you're secretly trying to hydrate. The church doesn't help much. One sermon warns that God did not invent water for bathing in times of pestilence. Another insists that real purity comes from within, and preferably stays there. A few older folks mutter that in the old days, only nobility bathed regularly. And look what happened to them. Boils, bankruptcy, and an early grave. You don't argue. Of course, the real tragedy is what happens to the social fabric. Bathhouse closures mean no more gossip, no more awkward towel mix-ups, no more accidental meetings with the blacksmith's apprentice. Even courtship rituals suffer. When H2O is public enemy number 1, a compliment about someone's clean hands becomes fighting words. Romance is reduced to meaningful glances and the hope that your beloved's dirt is at least local. By the end of the day, you're itchy, tired, and ever so slightly more superstitious. But you're still alive, and in these times, that's what counts. You sigh, eye the water barrel one last time, and decide to hold off just until this whole plague thing blows over. Maybe next year, water can be your friend again. For now, it's just too risky to wash away your protective coating of hope, suspicion, and sheer stubborn survival. You can't make this up. In the era of the Black Death, water, once the symbol of life, is the scariest thing in town. And you're surviving. One dirty, suspicious, bone-dry day at a time. Doctors, by which we mean people with very large hats, agree. Opening your pores is a one-way ticket to Plague Town. The dirtier your skin, the better protected you are. It's not science, but it's definitely something. Welcome to the first era of immune-boosting grime. Imagine waking up in 1348, squinting into the dawn, and finding yourself suddenly a part-time epidemiologist. Everyone in town is whispering the latest medical wisdom. Don't scratch. Don't wash. And whatever you do, don't let your pores open up. And invite the Grim Reaper in for tea. The local doctor, who, to be fair, also trims hair, pulls teeth, and might moonlight as the village pig castrator, offers this sage advice while waving a stick covered in dried herbs. The skin is a wall, my child, and filth is the mortar. You nod, pretending this makes sense, because he's wearing a very impressive hat and nobody wants to offend a man with access to that many leeches. This theory has become gospel. In fact, bathing is now viewed as an act of self-harm, like drinking from the communal ditch or telling your landlord his wig is crooked. As far as anyone is concerned, pores are tiny open doors, and every time you take a bath, you're just swinging those doors wide for the plague to march right in. You try to keep your sleeves down, your neck covered, and your dirt perfectly in place, like a protective shellac of last winter's soup, barnyard residue, and whatever the wind blew in through the thatch. It doesn't stop with regular dirt either. People take their immune armor to creative new heights. Some recommend rubbing your skin with garlic for extra protection. Others swear by herbal poultices, which are really just weeds mashed into a paste and glued to your body with pure hope. The local wise woman, who has never trusted a bath, is suddenly the most popular person in town. Her business card just reads, "Will not wash, will not die." She's fully booked. As for you, the pressure is real. If you're caught with even a glint of clean skin, people start to talk. Did you see Thomas's ears? Practically shining. He'll be next, mark my words. Suddenly, everyone's monitoring the grime level. The filthier, the better. There's one guy who boasts he hasn't washed since the last solar eclipse, and he's become the gold standard for plague-proofing. Even the priest gives him a wide berth at Mass. Meanwhile, the science behind pore paranoia evolves. The theory goes like this. In hot water, your pores open up and let out vital essences. These essences are very important. Nobody's sure what they are, but they're yours, and you should keep them. If you lose too many, you might get fevers, fits, or start speaking in rhymes. Cold water is no better, because it shocks the system and leaves the pores defenseless. So, the only safe thing to do is nothing at all. You resign yourself to a layer of grime so dense it could be carbon dated. Of course, all this means you've become weirdly attached to your filth. You pat it like armor before heading outside. When it rains, you sprint for shelter, not because you'll get wet, but because you're terrified you'll get clean. You start to appreciate new sensations, the way mud cakes under your fingernails, the fuzzy warmth of your own personal microclimate, the mysterious wildlife setting up shop on your scalp. Congratulations, you're basically a medieval terrarium. But beneath the jokes and questionable wisdom, there's real anxiety. The plague is terrifying, invisible, and unexplainable. People need to do something, even if it's just deciding to never wash again. It's a desperate kind of control. You huddle by the fire with the others, comparing layers of grime and exchanging tips for how to make your skin look extra sealed. All the while, the town's doctors, hats now tilted slightly askew, nod in approval. You can't make this up. In an era with no germ theory, the best science money can buy is just add dirt. And so you carry on. Pores thoroughly plugged, skin heroically filthy, and confidence only slightly undermined by the scent. Welcome to the golden age of immune-boosting grime. May your filth protect you, and your pores stay stubbornly, suspiciously shut. The church weighs in, and bathing starts to look suspiciously like pride, vanity, or even heresy. God loves a humble servant, especially a humble, crusty one. So next time you reach for a washcloth, just remember, cleanliness is next to guiltiness. In plague-era Europe, the line between hygiene and heresy is thinner than your local monastery's soup. You wake up, scratch your chin, and consider the unspeakable. Maybe, just maybe, it's time to rinse the existential dread from your armpits. But before you can so much as splash your face, the church bells chime. The priest clears his throat, and suddenly, everyone's side-eyeing you like you've announced a plan to overthrow the bishop with a bar of soap, publicly. The clergy doubles down. Humility is next to holiness. And nothing says I'm humble like the aroma of spiritual devotion mingled with 2 months of unwashed wool. Bathing, they declare, is an indulgence of the flesh, a temptation to vanity, and, in these dire times, an invitation for the devil to catch you with your guard and your tunic down. The holiest saints, according to stories retold from pulpits across the continent, lived and died in the same skin, never so much as dipping a toe except for ritual foot washing on Holy Thursday. If you were truly pious, you'd let the dust settle, literally, on your path to salvation. Confession becomes less about envy and more about the secret shame of washing behind your ears. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. I used a damp cloth on my neck. The priest sighs, prescribes extra prayers, and discreetly scoots his chair farther away. The rumor mill cranks up. So-and-so was spotted with suspiciously clean hands, and didn't her crops fail last year? Coincidence? The congregation thinks not. It's not just the clergy, either. Neighbors whisper about the perils of excess cleanliness. If you're too well groomed, you might be accused of pride. Or worse, attempting to rise above your station. The medieval world has no patience for social climbers, especially ones who smell faintly of lavender. If you're a peasant, you're meant to be earthy, in all senses of the word. Nobles, who can occasionally get away with a scented bath, still make sure to leave a little dirt under their nails for public appearances, just to show they haven't lost touch with God's will or with basic survival. Bathing, it turns out, is a gateway sin. One day you're washing your feet. The next you're pondering a second tunic. Or maybe, gasp, reading a book. The local friar preaches against the dangers of worldly comforts, lumping baths right in with gambling, dancing, and singing in the street after dark. The message is clear. God loves a soul willing to suffer, and suffering is best endured with a robust layer of grime. Of course, there's a practical upside to this anti-bath crusade. Less time at the river means more time in the fields or at prayer. The Church even encourages communal suffering. Let us all unite in humility and in odor. You sit in the pews, shoulder to shoulder, basking in the collective perfume of sanctified discomfort. The air is thick enough to chew, but that just proves everyone's on the righteous path. But beneath the sermons and social pressure, there's a thread of anxiety. The world is collapsing. The plague is everywhere. And people are desperate for a reason, any reason. If the priest says God prefers his flock a little dusty, then so be it. At least it's something to control. The comfort of ritual, even if that ritual is not bathing, becomes a shield against the chaos outside. You can't make this up. In an age when survival means following rules you don't understand, the clean are guilty and the crusty are blessed. So you close your eyes, say your prayers, and maybe cross yourself just a little extra, hoping that God, at the very least, has a strong nose and a forgiving heart. And you promise, if you survive this year, maybe you'll risk a quick rinse, just not on a Sunday. When no one bathes, no one notices. In fact, smelling like yourself is the only way to prove you're not a foreign spy or a witch. Social gatherings are a contest in olfactory endurance. If you're the only one who doesn't reek, you're the weirdo. Welcome to the new rules of social life, where personal aroma is less about making an impression and more about making sure you don't stand out for the wrong reasons. You trudge down the muddy street to the market, shoulder to shoulder with fellow villagers, and the first thing that hits you is not the sound of gossip, but the collective bouquet of your neighbor's safety layers. There's the earthy tang of barnyard, a top note of week-old onions, and something in the background that's probably just hope fermenting into resignation. You'd think everyone would be desperate for fresh air. But the air isn't fresh, it's communal. It binds you all together. There's something oddly comforting about it, like a scented candle made from shared misery and a touch of goat. You see your friend William and nod in greeting. William smells like William. That's how you know it's really him, and not some doppelganger or shape-shifting demon sent to replace him, which, in the Middle Ages, was a legitimate fear after dark or during tax season. In this world, cleanliness isn't just suspicious, it's outright dangerous. People have developed a sixth sense for outsiders. Too tidy? Wrong? Too fragrant? Definitely up to something. You're either new in town, up to no good, or both. If you dare to wash your hair, and it suddenly has a shine, expect some awkward silences at the alehouse. He's been to the river, someone will whisper, eyes narrowing. Why? What's he hiding? The answer, obviously, is shampoo, potentially heretical. It's not just about avoiding suspicion. Communal filth is an equalizer. Nobles and peasants, men and women, young and old. When everyone smells, no one judges. There's a kind of egalitarian comfort in knowing that the local lord is just as ripe as the apprentice tanner. It's hard to maintain a social hierarchy when nobody can hold their nose higher than anyone else. The village festival becomes a celebration of togetherness and collective odor, punctuated by dances where partners politely try to keep the wind at their backs. If you're planning a party, you don't send invitations, you send warnings. Come to my house, bring bread. Leave your expectations of cleanliness at the door. Weddings and church services are standing room only events where people cluster not for warmth, but for reassurance. We're all in this together, and yes, we all smell like we crawled out of a moat. It's strangely comforting. This new reality turns personal hygiene into a group project. If you catch your neighbor scrubbing their hands a bit too hard at the well, you gently nudge them aside and remind them, "Steady on, friend. You don't want to get too clean." Gossip isn't about who's sleeping with whom. It's about who's sneaking off for a forbidden wash. The last person who tried to bathe regularly found a surprise frog in their bed and a new nickname, Sir Suds. Kids, meanwhile, are wild with freedom, rolling in mud, chasing pigs, and coming home caked in layers of grime. Parents barely bat an eye. Why worry? They're just adding to the family's protective barrier. And besides, nobody has time to boil water every time a child accidentally falls in the stream. Of course, communal filth isn't all fun and games. Sometimes the aroma is so overpowering it sends the family dog running for cover. But even then, there's solidarity in suffering. A shared misery is a lighter misery. If you can joke about who's responsible for the worst smell at the table, you've built something real, camaraderie forged in dirt. You can't make this up. In the age of the plague, the nose is the truest test of trust, and your personal cloud of stink is your passport to belonging. To be safe, to be accepted, to be home, you just have to embrace the funk. Let's talk logistics. The local river doubles as a laundry, a public sewer, and a spa for cows. Fetching clean water for a bath. That's a luxury. reserved for the terminally optimistic and the foolishly brave. You wake up with dreams of maybe, just maybe, splashing your face with something that doesn't actively fight back. But reality hits as soon as you step outside with your wooden bucket and your unrealistic expectations. The nearest well is a mile away, and rumor has it the last person to draw from it found something with whiskers and a very low opinion of human sanitation swirling at the bottom. The river is closer, sure, but every villager knows the hierarchy of the riverbank. First come the women doing laundry, then the cows, then the ducks, then a rotating cast of children using the mud for unsanctioned skincare routines. The river, as an institution, is the town's great equalizer. It's where you go to wash your clothes, fill your bucket, and possibly catch dysentery. Just by making eye contact with the downstream current. And you're not the only one eyeing the water with suspicion. Your neighbor Gertrude claims she saw a ghost washing its spectral undergarments by moonlight. Frankly, you believe her. You've seen weirder things float by at noon. Let's say you're determined. You want clean water. You time your trip just right, elbow past 3 pigs and a goose with anger management issues, and lower your bucket in with the practiced resignation of someone who's seen what comes out of this river before. Maybe, if you're lucky, the water is only a little bit green. Maybe you're even luckier, and there's only a faint aroma of farm. But then, the doubts begin. Wasn't there an edict about dumping chamber pots upstream? Is that a leaf? Or is it last week's mystery meat from the inn? If you're feeling truly desperate for a pure bath, you might try to collect rainwater. This is a time-honored tradition for those who enjoy standing outside with a bucket and a prayer, hoping a bird doesn't use your personal spa as a landing pad. If you manage to fill a barrel, it sits outside your door, collecting dust, bugs, and the odd medieval surprise. By the time you go to use it, it's basically a mobile swamp. Congratulations, you've invented ecosystem-based skincare. Of course, some people swear by wells. Deep, dark, and mysterious. Wells are the original medieval hydration challenge. If you lower your rope and bring up water that looks even remotely clear, you thank the saints and chug before anyone else in the house can claim it. But most days, wells are a gamble. There's a reason the village herbalist insists on boiling everything. And it's not just to practice her spells. All of this makes the very concept of bathing seem absurd. You're not going to waste your hard-won, possibly haunted, definitely questionable water supply on washing your body. That's for drinking, for soup, and, when the wind is right, for pretending you don't smell as bad as everyone else. If you dare to ask for extra water for a rinse, prepare to be laughed out of your own home. You want a bath? What's next? Silk sheets and a pet unicorn. And yet, even with all the risks, water is life, if occasionally life-threatening. You share the struggle with every villager. You've all seen what happens when the river floods. Spoiler, nothing good. And you know the quiet horror of discovering someone upstream has decided to do laundry with something unidentifiable. Still, you gather your bucket, take your chances, and join the daily ballet of dodging goose bites and avoiding suspicious puddles. You can't make this up. In medieval times, the only thing more dangerous than the plague is trusting your local water supply. And so, you adapt, you joke, and you do your best with what you have, because survival isn't about staying clean. It's about staying just hydrated enough to tell the tale. You've got a fever, suspicious spots, and a strong desire to wash it all away. The doctor's prescription? Don't. The cure for what ails you is a healthy dose of don't touch anything, especially yourself, with water. You shuffle into the healer's hut, hoping for comfort, or at least a reassuring nod. Instead, the village doctor greets you from across the room, carefully keeping a desk, a cauldron, and a small pile of leeches between the two of you. He eyes your spots, consults his favorite medical manual, the one that also doubles as a doorstop, and, after a pause, delivers the diagnosis. You've got the plague, or possibly a chill, or perhaps a touch of the melancholy humours. Whatever it is, don't wash, not even your feet. You ask if maybe just a little rinse might help. He recoils as if you'd suggested wrestling a bear in church. Open pores are the devil's doorway. You wash, you die. Best to seal up the skin, preferably with a hearty layer of good English dirt. He prescribes a regimen of vinegar-soaked rags, burnt rosemary, and, if you're lucky, sitting very still and thinking happy thoughts. Washing is strictly forbidden. You're advised to avoid fresh air, laughter, and anything that might remind you of the old, dangerously clean days. The remedies get more creative, the sicker you become. If your fever rises, the doctor might bleed you, medieval healthcare's favourite party trick, or slap a leech on your forehead and tell you to count your blessings. No matter how high your temperature, he assures you that water is still more dangerous than whatever's turning your fingernails purple. Bathing could unbalance the humours, let in bad air, or worse, wash away the protective crust that's apparently holding your soul together. The local wise woman is more practical, but no less suspicious of soap. She offers a tisane brewed from herbs, a dried mouse in a sachet to scare away the spirits, and a quick slap on the wrist if she catches you with wet hands. The priest is called in to bless you, warn you against the evils of vanity, and perhaps mutter a prayer that your pores stay tightly closed until next Easter. The advice extends to your family as well. They're told not to approach, not to comfort you, and above all, not to wipe down your brow with anything that hasn't been certified as bone dry. The only approved contact is with a 10-foot pole, which, in some circles, is the first documented case of social distancing. You start to wonder about the other don'ts on the medieval doctor's list. Don't eat hot food, it excites the blood. Don't eat cold food, it weakens the blood. Don't get wet, don't get dry, don't look at the moon. The safest thing seems to be huddling in the dark, scratching your rash through a layer of wool, and waiting for the crisis to pass or for the leeches to unionize and demand better hours. Even when you recover, or, more realistically, when your symptoms plateau and the doctor runs out of ideas, the official line is, no bathing. Why tempt fate, he says, as if soap itself is in league with the four horsemen. If you dare to bathe and then improve, everyone quietly credits the prayers, the leeches, and the powerful healing properties of not washing. The only exception, it seems, is if you're wealthy enough to import an expensive doctor from Italy, one who insists on strange foreign habits like hand-washing or boiling water. Naturally, the locals assume he's either a genius or planning to poison the well. You can't make this up. In a world where medical wisdom is equal parts folklore and creative avoidance of personal hygiene, the only thing more dangerous than the plague is your own desire to feel clean. So you follow the doctor's orders, add another layer of dirt, and try not to sneeze on the way out, because the only prescription here is stay filthy and hope for the best. The plague doctor's outfit is legendary: beaked mask, robes, gloves. The real secret? It's not just for looks. Underneath, the only thing separating you from the patient is a 6-month head start on the no-bathing trend. Let's set the scene. You're a medieval plague doctor, summoned to the sickbed of some terrified noble or shivering peasant. You wake up, don your long black robe, ideally waxed, but let's be honest, it's probably just slightly less absorbent wool. and prepare to step into the hot zone. But before you even reach for your supplies, you pause for the most important step. Do not bathe. The less you've washed, the thicker your protective layer of medieval stink, which, according to popular belief, could keep out the bad airs as well as any mask or robe. Next, the signature accessory, the beaked mask. It's stuffed with herbs, spices, and maybe a slice of moldy orange if you're feeling fancy. This isn't just medieval aromatherapy, it's science, or at least as close as anyone gets in 1348. The logic goes that miasmas, or poisonous airs, carry the plague. But if you filter those airs through enough dried rosemary and marjoram, you're basically invincible. Plus, it hides your face, so nobody can tell if you're secretly holding your breath. And let's not forget the gloves, leather, if you can afford them, or whatever scraps you can scavenge if you can't. You don't want to touch anything, not even yourself. Especially not yourself. The boots are pulled up high. The cloak wraps tightly. And you start to resemble a Gothic scarecrow with a keen interest in poultry. The best part? Every layer you add makes you sweat. And every bead of sweat just adds to your no-bathing advantage. You are now a walking, sweating, slightly fungal fortress. But the true brilliance of the plague doctor's look is what's underneath. No one wants to talk about it, but rumor has it that some doctors layer old linens, animal hides, and whatever spare rags they can find. Anything to keep the plague out, the smell in, and the courage up. Some say the bravest doctors were the smelliest. After all, if you could clear a room just by taking off your hat, you'd have a fighting chance against any disease. This isn't just individual style. It's workplace safety. The outfit is supposed to prevent you from touching, inhaling, or absorbing anything dangerous, but also, conveniently, prevents patients from getting too close. If you walk into a house smelling like an abandoned spice cupboard, most people back away and let you work. That's the goal: minimize contact, maximize mystique, and hope nobody notices your hands are shaking behind those heavy gloves. Of course, there's more to it. The beak isn't just for fashion or even filtering air. It also masks your reaction to what you see and smell. If you grimace at a patient's purple spots, they can't tell. If you're fighting, the urge to gag at the aroma of a household that hasn't seen soap since last harvest, no one's the wiser. It's emotional PPE. The only downside: trying to eat lunch with your mask on, which usually ends with stew in your lap and more stains for the protective collection. Some say the plague doctor uniform is terrifying, but really it's a sign of hope. At least someone is brave, or desperate, enough to show up. Kids hide behind doorways, grown men stare, and everyone prays the doctor's appearance means someone might actually survive. But there's another reason you're scary. You're a reminder that under all the layers and herbs and waxed linen, the best defense anyone has is solid commitment to never, ever bathing. You can't make this up. In the era of the Black Death, medical professionals didn't just fight the plague, they outstank it. If survival meant wearing a beak, a robe, and enough sweat to pickle a cabbage, so be it. In medieval medicine, smell isn't a problem. It's the first line of defense. Desperate times call for desperate measures. Enter medieval perfumes, spicy, herbal, and strong enough to stun a goat at 10 paces. Because when you can't clean, you can always camouflage. You step outside, take a whiff, and immediately regret it. The whole town smells like it's been slow-cooked in a barrel of onions, with subtle notes of cow, wood smoke, and existential dread. Bathhouses are closed, the river's a biohazard, and soap is rarer than an honest tax collector. But never fear. Where soap fails, medieval ingenuity kicks in. Suddenly, everyone's dabbing, dousing, and marinating themselves in anything with a scent. The age of perfume has arrived. Of course, perfume is a generous term. Most recipes are equal parts hope and horticultural overkill. You wander through the market, where apothecaries and amateur chemists hawk mysterious bottles, vials, and greasy pots. Scents range from freshly trampled rosemary to mint with a side of old cabbage. If you're lucky and wealthy, you get imported oils, frankincense, rose, or something labeled musk, which suspiciously smells like someone's barn cat. Everyone's got their signature move. Some folks carry posies, small bouquets of flowers and herbs, tied to their belts or pinned inside their hats, ready for an emergency sniff if the air gets too medieval. Nobles waft sachets of lavender under their noses, the rich equivalent of holding your breath until the bad smell leaves the room. Peasants, meanwhile, rely on whatever's growing nearby. Sage, thyme, wormwood, or wild garlic if you really want people to keep their distance. For the truly committed, there's the pomander, a decorative metal orb filled with anything aromatic, worn on a chain and clutched to the face like a medieval gas mask. You wander the streets with your pomander in hand, inhaling with all the enthusiasm of someone who just discovered personal boundaries. It's fashion. It's survival. It's olfactory self-defense. The church naturally gets involved. Incense burns at every service. Clouds of frankincense and myrrh rolling down the aisles, sanctifying the faithful and temporarily masking the less than holy aromas from the pews. Priests swing censers with enough vigor to clear a row of parishioners, and for a brief, blessed moment, everyone is enveloped in something other than the stench of fear and sweat. It's not a miracle cure, but it helps. Medieval doctors, never ones to miss a trend, prescribe strong scents as a way to keep out the plague. Bad air brings disease, they insist. But good air, meaning anything that doesn't smell like feet, can save you. Herbalists mix up special concoctions: clove, studded oranges, vinegar, soaked sponges, even perfumes made from boiled wine, spices, and whatever else is lying around. Some of these brews are so potent they burn your nostrils, which is technically a sign of effectiveness. Social etiquette changes overnight. Instead of worrying about your neighbor's opinions, you worry about their aromatic radius. If someone smells too strong, you compliment their resourcefulness, even as your eyes water. People compare recipes in secret. My lavender mint blend kept the butcher away for a week. Oh, you must try juniper. No one will stand downwind. There are, of course, downsides. Too much perfume, and you risk starting a fire or attracting every bee in the parish. Too little, and you're just another victim of the public sniff test. Occasionally, someone tries to combine every available scent, creating a chemical reaction strong enough to make the town cat faint. The arms race for the best masking aroma gets so competitive that rumors spread about a noble who tried to impress the king with a new rosewater essence and instead cleared the banquet hall for the rest of the night. You can't make this up. In a world where filth is armor, perfume becomes the weapon of choice. When in doubt, mask it out. If you can't be clean, at least you can be interesting. And in medieval Europe, sometimes that's the only thing standing between you and total social extinction. Head lice? That's just medieval hair jewelry. Washing your hair is a good way to die cold and full of regret. Instead, everyone's swapping knit comb tips like beauty influencers with a death wish. Let's be honest. Medieval hair care is less about shine and bounce and more about not waking up to the gentle crawl of something setting up shop on your scalp. Your average morning starts with a scratch, then another, then another. You sigh. Pick up your trusty wooden comb, heirloom probably, because nobody throws anything away in the 1300s, and get to work. You're not looking for style, you're looking for movement. The combing is a group activity, with mothers going through their children's hair at the communal fire, and aunts offering suggestions like, try vinegar, or, if that fails, pray harder. No one expects to actually get rid of the lice. The goal is just to keep the numbers manageable, below biblical plague level. Lice, nits, and the occasional mystery bug are part of the social landscape, like turnips, fleas, and questionable advice from your neighbor. People bond over their lice. Mine are bigger this year. Someone boasts at the market. You should see the ones on my cousin's head. It's the closest thing to a status symbol for those who can't afford shoes, and certainly more attainable. Shampoo is a fantasy. Maybe you've heard of someone who's heard of someone who used soap and survived. But the tale always ends with a warning. She tried to wash her hair. Now she's got a cough and a haunted look in her eyes. The logic is simple. The more you mess with your hair, the more likely you are to open your scalp to cold, plague, or just social ridicule. Besides, hair washing takes water. Water takes courage. And nobody wants to be the cautionary tale whispered about in the next village. Hairstyles, if you can call them that, reflect the function over form spirit of the era. Long, unwashed locks are tied back with a scrap of leather or twisted into knots that double as hiding spots for small wildlife. Hats are a must, not for fashion, but to keep the worst of the bugs from migrating to your neighbor during church. If you've got money, you might own a fancy cap or a woolen hood. Congratulations, your lice are now nobility. For everyone else, it's whatever cloth is handy, even if it's already home to several generations of insect tenants. Social gatherings are prime knit comb exchanges. There's always someone selling a new comb, boasting it's made from the finest cow bone, guaranteed to last a lifetime, and, by implication, to outlast the lice problem. Kids trade combs like medieval Pokemon cards. Rumors fly. So-and-so's aunt has a special recipe with onions and strong words. Kills lice dead. The real secret? Persistence, resignation, and a dash of dark humor. Of course, all this means lice are a shared experience. Couples pick through each other's hair by firelight, a romantic gesture, or at least a practical one. The priest offers blessings for the afflicted, but even he's scratching by the end of Mass. You learn to live with the occasional tickle, to brush off the snickers from friends, and to see lice as part of the rich tapestry of medieval existence. Some folks even believe lice are a sign of God's favor. The saints had lice, and so do I. We suffer together. Sure, you think, but maybe the saints had better combs. You can't make this up. In a world where getting clean could kill you, lice aren't just tolerated, they're accessorized. Your best weapon is a strong comb, a thicker skin, and a sense of humor as unbreakable as your hair's mysterious texture. So the next time you feel a wiggle, just remember, you're not dirty. You're historically authentic. And in the Middle Ages, that's the best look you can have. Washing your clothes is so risky. Most people just add another layer. Over time, you develop a natural armor, thick, smelly, but, hey, medically sound. Let's face it, the medieval approach to laundry makes your pile of dirty gym clothes look like a spa day at the Ritz. In a world where water is basically radioactive and soap is a suspicious luxury, the average person has a relationship with their tunic that borders on symbiotic. You wake up, sniff the nearest garment, and the answer is always the same: just put on another shirt. no one is peeling off layers unless absolutely necessary. By midwinter, you could survive a sword blow thanks to sheer fabric density and the subtle power of protective crust. Actual laundry day is less of a scheduled event and more of a last resort, usually prompted by a neighbor politely suggesting your shirt now qualifies as a biohazard, or the local priest dropping hints about cleansing one's spirit and maybe one's undershirt. The first hurdle is water. You need to haul it from the well or the river, which, as you've learned, is already hosting every plague organism in a 5-mile radius. Then comes the heating, because nothing says fun family activity like boiling half a barrel over an open fire and hoping the wind doesn't change. Soap, if you even have it, is reserved for emergencies or for dealing with those truly legendary stains, the kind that get talked about for generations. Most of the time you rely on ashes, sand, or, if you're feeling fancy, a splash of sour beer. If you really want to impress the neighbors, you beat your tunic on a flat rock at the riverbank, in full view of the cows and anyone else brave enough to be outdoors. The process itself is physically and emotionally draining. Scrub, rinse, wring out, repeat, and pray your vital humors don't leak out along with the filth. The best part? You then have to dry everything, which means hanging your laundry outside and guarding it from wandering animals, neighborhood thieves, and, occasionally, judgmental nuns who claim God prefers you dirty. By the time it's all over, you're exhausted, and your only reward is a still damp tunic that now smells like smoke, river mud, and faint disappointment. For most people, the logical solution is simple. Don't wash, just layer. If your outer tunic is crusty, put a slightly less crusty one over it. If it's cold out, congratulations, your grime now works as insulation. You're less a person and more a walking archaeological dig. Some peasants claim their shirts can stand up by themselves, which is only partly a joke. If you're lucky, your clothes develop a patina that is both wind-resistant and, according to local wisdom, slightly plague-proof. Of course, there's a social component to all this. Gossip swirls about the one neighbor who washes his leggings twice a month. Showing off. People mutter. Kids are told horror stories about distant villages where people washed all the time and then mysteriously disappeared. The lesson is clear. Keep your dirt, keep your health, and keep your reputation spotless, at least in the figurative sense. Laundry emergencies do occur. Someone drops a cup of pottage down their front, or the baby's diaper cloth finally achieves sentience. In these moments, the entire household mobilizes, scrubbing and muttering prayers. It's a bonding experience. Nothing brings a family together like sharing frostbitten fingers and communal regret. Afterwards, everyone swears off laundry for another month, possibly forever. You can't make this up. In a world terrified of both water and judgment, the filthiest solution is often the safest. You develop your own unique blend of odor, pride, and medieval practicality. Laundry day isn't just about getting clean. It's about lowering the bar, surviving another week, and wearing your crust with confidence. The nobility might have more money, but they've got the same ideas about cleanliness. Turns out, rich people can also be incredibly superstitious and, in this era, just as pungent. You might imagine that if you had a castle, a title, and an income tax bracket that doesn't exist yet, you'd at least get a hot bath out of the deal. Think again. Step into a medieval great hall and you'll discover that, while the wine might be flowing and the food comes with spices imported from somewhere you can't even pronounce, everyone still smells faintly like a stable. Wealth can buy a lot, jewels, fine cloaks, a personal falconer, but it can't buy a reliable bar of soap. or, more importantly, the courage to actually use it. Take Lord Reginald, for example. He owns half the county, a wardrobe full of Italian velvet, and a bathhouse with marble floors that hasn't seen a drop of water since last Michaelmas. Washing, he declares, swirling his goblet, is for fools and foreigners. His guests nod in solemn agreement, each hoping no one notices the faint, persistent aroma of damp wool and last week's feast. When you sit at the high table, you learn to keep your compliments to matters of land management, not personal hygiene. It's not for lack of resources. Nobles have tubs, glorious, oversized wooden barrels lined with linen and sometimes even silver, but filling one requires servants, firewood, and enough clean water to fill a moat. By the time everything's ready, the bath water is already lukewarm, and at least one page boy has fallen in. The Lord might take a dip once a season, usually as a public event, complete with music, fruit, and a priest on hand to make sure no one drowns in a fit of cleanliness. Even when they do bathe, the upper classes are careful not to overdo it. The same paranoia about pores, miasmas, and bad airs applies at all levels of society. In fact, nobles can be even more cautious. After all, they have more to lose. The family fortune could vanish in a single soak. Ladies worry that a bath will ruin their complexions or worse, make them vulnerable to the same invisible evils that plague the common folk. If a countess is seen emerging from the bath with pink cheeks, the rumor mill goes wild. Is she sick? Is she vain? Was that really rosemary in the bath? Or is she dabbling in sorcery? When it comes to scent, the nobility have options. If you can't get clean, you might as well get creative. Lavender sachets, imported oils, and perfumes strong enough to floor a horse become status symbols. A nobleman might spend a fortune on rosewater, only to splash it around the room and never on himself. The result is a heady mix of floral notes and good old-fashioned body odor, wafting through the air like a declaration of both wealth and shared superstition. Of course, this doesn't mean the servants are any cleaner. Their job is to manage the Lord's bath, not take one. If anything, they become experts at faking it, dampening hair, powdering faces, and dabbing a little wine behind the ears to mask the scent of a 12-hour day. The only real difference is that the nobility can afford to have someone else carry their dirty laundry. Class divides remain, but in the world of hygiene, everyone's in the same sinking boat. Bathing is a risk, and nobody wants to be the first to tempt fate. If you're rich, you just have more creative ways to avoid it. In the grand game of who smells the least questionable, it's an Olympic sport with no gold medal, just the satisfaction of knowing you're as superstitious and stinky as everyone else in your social circle. You can't make this up. In plague-era Europe, the higher your birth, the greater your fear of soap. Cleanliness is a gamble, and everyone's betting on dirt. Stories abound of the one person who dared to bathe and promptly caught the plague. This is the tale your grandmother tells to keep you from touching the soap. In the lore of medieval towns, every village has its own cautionary tale. There's always a someone. Maybe it was Cousin Edgar, maybe old widow Maud, or perhaps just an unnamed neighbor's friend's brother who made the fatal mistake of getting a little too clean. The story goes like this. On a perfectly ordinary morning, they decided to wash up, maybe in a moment of weakness or possibly after a direct hit from a passing pigeon, with a bucket of water, a sliver of hard-won soap, and just a little too much optimism. They scrubbed behind their ears, rinsed off the protective crust, and basked in the rare, fleeting sensation of being one shade lighter than the local barn cat. By sundown, the rumors were already flying. Have you seen how pink Edgar's cheeks are? That can't be natural. Did you hear Maud actually washed her feet in this season? Eyebrows arch. Children peer around corners. The church bell rings a little longer than usual. By nightfall, the tale takes on a supernatural edge. Did the devil himself slip through those clean pores? Is a wandering spirit about to take up residence in that dangerously fresh skin? The next morning, Cousin Edgar is coughing. Widow Maud's got a suspicious bump. Nobody remembers if these were always there, but it doesn't matter. The timeline is set. Within days, the inevitable happens. Fever, chills, spots, and the swift, brutal judgment of the medieval imagination. Cause of death? Obvious. It wasn't the fleas or the rats or the neighbor who's been sneezing for weeks. It was the bath. You wash, you die. That's just science, as far as the village is concerned. Your grandmother leans in, her eyes wide and dramatic. You see, child, water is for drinking and soup, not for challenging the will of heaven. Dirt protects us. Your great-uncle learned that the hard way, and now we light a candle every time someone suggests a rinse. She pinches your arm for emphasis, just in case you were thinking of sneaking a wash before Sunday. Naturally, this becomes a kind of community folklore. People love telling stories that justify their choices, especially when those choices involve avoiding effort. If you're young, these stories are a little scary, a little funny, and just compelling enough to make you think twice before reaching for a washcloth. If you're older, they're a helpful way to nudge everyone toward the right kind of behavior. Dirty, humble, and safe. You overhear the stories everywhere. At the well, where nobody's willing to draw an extra bucket. At the market, where the fishmonger's hands are suspiciously shiny. In the church pews, where the priest weaves a stern warning about tempting fate with vanity. The message is clear. Cleanliness is not just a risk. It's an affront to the natural order. Better to let dirt be your shield and stay on the right side of history. Every once in a while, some bold soul ignores the warnings. Maybe they're new in town, maybe they're just fed up with the smell, or maybe they don't believe in fairy tales. The result is always the same. A new story, a new example, and a fresh wave of anxiety that sweeps through the village. You can practically hear the collective sigh of relief as everyone wraps themselves tighter in their unwashed cloaks, silently thanking the universe for another reminder. You can't make this up. In a time when ignorance is truly bliss, staying dirty isn't just self-preservation, it's family tradition, so you nod along, promise to avoid the soap, and add another layer of medieval myth to your growing collection. After all, you'd hate to be the next chapter in the story of the last bath. With the town's hygiene rating in freefall, public urination is just another Tuesday. Bathing? Too risky. But peeing out your window? Culturally mandatory. If there's one thing medieval life gets right, it's efficiency. Why trek to a private chamber when you can simply open a window and contribute to the growing aroma of communal living? When nature calls, you answer, loudly, sometimes literally, since custom demands you shout a warning before tossing your chamber pot contents onto the unsuspecting street below. The French had a phrase for it, garde l'eau, watch out for the water. But most people just settle for a quick holler, a hasty dump, and then slam the shutters. If you hear the call, you duck. If not, well, you learn quickly. Bathroom privacy is a modern luxury. In the Middle Ages, the line between indoor and outdoor plumbing is mostly imaginary. Your humble abode is probably a one-room hut, shared with relatives, livestock, and maybe a passing traveler who just never left. The bathroom is a wooden bucket, strategically hidden behind a curtain, or not, depending on how much shame your family has left. By morning, it's full to the brim, and you hope someone else volunteers for the daily dump run. Spoiler, it's probably you. For those with more resources, like a noble with a drafty stone castle, the situation improves slightly, but only in theory. Castles come equipped with the legendary garderobe, essentially a stone alcove with a hole that opens directly to the outside. The idea is simple. What goes in must go out, ideally into the moat below. Unfortunately, the moat is also the first line of defense, the local fishery, and, on a bad day, the drinking water supply. Medieval multitasking, at its most questionable. Street life takes on new meaning when you realize every alley is a potential hazard zone. Walking to the market is an exercise in dodging puddles of questionable origin. On hot days, the stench rises like a chorus, reminding everyone why open-toed shoes are a terrible idea. When the rains come, the entire village holds its breath and prays that the floods don't turn their homes into floating latrines. The phrase downstream problems takes on a whole new level of urgency. Children, of course, treat the outdoors as a giant bathroom, which, in their defense, is exactly what it is. Parents half-heartedly remind them to avoid the neighbor's cabbage patch. But otherwise, let the world be their chamber pot. You might think this would lead to judgment or scandal, but it's just business as usual. In fact, if you were to suggest a system of indoor toilets, most people would stare at you in horror. Why trap all those smells indoors? They'd ask, shaking their heads at your bizarre ideas. In the absence of modern plumbing, some clever souls invent the night soil industry, collecting waste to use as fertilizer in the fields. The result? You get crops that grow surprisingly well, and a whole new reason to wash your turnips before dinner. If you ever wondered why medieval recipes call for so many strong spices, now you know. Sometimes you're not just masking the taste of rotten meat, but the faint hint of village vintage. As for bathing, forget it. Why risk your health just to smell slightly less terrible? Far better to embrace the funk, maintain your natural ecosystem, and keep your bucket handy. The only thing less popular than soap is the poor soul caught scrubbing themselves in public. Now there's someone who will never live down the embarrassment. You can't make this up. In a world where everyone shares everything, bodily functions become a communal sport. You pee out the window, avoid eye contact in the street, and hope for rain to wash away your secrets. Modern plumbing is centuries away. But for now, medieval life is all about going with the flow, just not anywhere near your front door. Nothing unites a community like a scandal, and nothing is more scandalous than a secret bath. If the neighbors suspect you of getting clean, expect a visit from the medieval neighborhood watch. In a world where everyone prides themselves on a uniform layer of protective grime, the mere suggestion that you've risked a rinse is enough to get the rumor mill churning faster than the town's butter. It starts with a whisper. Someone saw you walking back from the river, hair suspiciously damp, or caught a faint whiff of something that was definitely not goat. Next thing you know, 3 aunts, 2 neighbors, and the local priest are at your door, all just stopping by for a casual inspection of your forearms. The interrogation is subtle but relentless. Lovely weather, isn't it? Not too warm for a wash, I hope? Or, funny, you look different today. Glowing almost. Not ill, are you? If you stammer, you're done for. If you answer too quickly, you're hiding something. It's a delicate dance, this social camouflage. The safest move is to claim you slipped and fell into the stream while trying to catch a runaway turnip. No one wants to admit to personal hygiene, but accidental immersion is, for now, a plausible alibi. But if you don't have a good story, or worse, if you have a repeat offense, the stakes escalate. Children whisper as you walk by, pointing and giggling. The baker suddenly starts selling your bread slightly stale. You'll hear the rumor from every angle. Did You hear? He bathed, you know, with soap. It's the kind of scandal that sticks longer than mud on your boots. Medieval society has its priorities, and at the top of the list is conformity. If everyone is filthy, then you'd better be too. Being too clean is suspicious, possibly a sign of vanity, possibly the mark of a witch, and almost definitely an invitation for bad luck. If the harvest fails, if the cow gives sour milk, if the parish priest stubs his toe, well, guess whose sudden sparkle is getting the blame? It's you, Sudsy McRisk-taker? Sometimes, the concerned citizens take things a step further. The medieval neighborhood watch isn't just nosy, they're proactive. You might wake up to find a mysterious turnip on your doorstep, a subtle warning that your behavior is under review. Or maybe someone leaves a clump of mud on your favorite sitting stone, a gentle reminder to blend in. If you persist, you risk a visit from the village elders, who will sit you down, explain the possumals, risks of open pores, and tell you about Cousin Edgar, who bathed and then, eventually, died. A story that has only improved with each retelling. And if you're thinking, I'll just keep my bathing private, think again. Medieval homes offer less privacy than a modern group chat. If you try to sneak out at dawn with a towel, there's a good chance the local gossip, perched at her window, will see you and add a dramatic flourish. She carried a bucket and a cloth. No question she's up to something. For a brief, fleeting moment, you consider going public, owning your newfound cleanliness, and starting a trend. But self-preservation wins out. It's safer to let a new layer of dust accumulate, to feign an itchy scalp, and to scratch with the best of them. You lean into your filth, join the chorus of grumbling about the dangers of overwashing, and quietly resolve to never let anyone know about that one glorious, forbidden bath. You can't make this up. In medieval Europe, nothing spreads faster than gossip, except maybe the plague. A single bath makes you a legend, a cautionary tale, and a one-person public health crisis. So you keep your secrets. Play along. And remember, sometimes blending in means never washing off. Winter comes, and the water is so cold it could kill you twice. Bathing now is either a mark of extreme bravery or clear evidence of a head injury. You wake before dawn, wrapped in every blanket, cloak, and semi-clean rag you own. Your breath fogs in the air, a visible reminder that medieval insulation is mostly wishful thinking and a thin wall of mud. The very idea of undressing, even for a second, is enough to send shivers down your spine and possibly summon a lecture from your grandmother. You'll catch your death, and then who'll help me patch these socks? In summer, you might have at least considered a river dunk, if only to escape the itch. But now, the bucket of water by your door has frozen solid. The village well is ringed by a defensive line of ice, and the river is so sluggish you suspect it's thinking of hibernating. Fetching fresh water means braving the elements, hacking through a crust of ice, and negotiating with a herd of annoyed cows that have claimed the least windy spot on the bank. If you're unlucky, or perhaps just overambitious, you decide today is the day for personal hygiene. You shiver as you roll up your sleeves, dip your hand in, and instantly regret every decision that led you here. The shock hits like a slap from Father Bernard, and for a moment you wonder if your fingers are going to fall off or just freeze in place, mid-scrub. By the time you finish, you're convinced your ancestors didn't survive the Ice Age by taking baths. Of course, this isn't lost on your fellow villagers. If anyone catches you near a water source, they'll stare in wide-eyed disbelief. Did you see Thomas at the river this morning? In January? He must have angered the spirits. Or maybe he's courting the blacksmith's daughter and lost a bet. Gossip spreads fast, fueled by a combination of boredom and second-hand hypothermia. The bravest souls in the village are the ones who can go all winter without so much as a single rinse. You want respect? Don't wash. Inside, people invent new excuses for not bathing. It's too cold, my pores will snap shut. If you open your shirt, the chill will seep into your bones and never come out. I'm building up a layer of insulation, very scientific. The few who attempt to wash do so in tiny increments. A splash behind the ears, a brisk dab at the wrists, and a quick dry-off by the fire before anyone notices. The result? A population that's both frosty and funky, united by shared discomfort and a desperate longing for spring. Families become experts at tactical layering. If you can't wash your tunic, just add another on top. Like medieval lasagna, your body heat and a thick patina of dirt become your best defense against frostbite. The dog curls up by your feet, not because he loves you, but because you both radiate unwashed warmth. If a guest complains about the smell, you blame the weather and suggest they try surviving a January bath before casting stones. Every winter, someone inevitably tries to outdo the rest. Usually a visiting merchant who hasn't yet learned local wisdom. They announce plans for a full-body wash, strip down, and are last seen sprinting for the fire, howling and blue-lipped as the town's children cackle and elders shake their heads. It's the sort of story that gets repeated for years. Remember the year old Simon tried a bath? In January? We're still finding his socks. You can't make this up. In a world without hot showers or heated bathrooms, winter water is nature's ultimate nope. So you huddle by the fire, swap horror stories, and thank your lucky stars for every day you don't have to risk turning into a medieval popsicle, all in the name of questionable hygiene. Official prime, proclamations shutter the bathhouses, blaming them for plague outbreaks. Meanwhile, the tavern stays open, because, obviously, germs only like to party near soap. It starts with a flurry of public notices, hammered to every door and shouted from every street corner by a town crier who's suddenly more popular than the village baker. By order of the council, all bathhouses shall remain closed until further notice. The health of the realm depends on it. No mention of what further notice means. Probably sometime after everyone has either survived the plague or forgotten what clean skin feels like. You watch the local bathhouse, once the center of gossip and hygiene, slowly transform into a boarded-up relic. The window shutters creak in the wind. The steam that used to billow from the roof is replaced by an eerie silence and a general sense of missed opportunity. The regulars, peasants, merchants, and that one guy who always brought his own loofah stand outside, forlorn, remembering when a little heat and suds were the highlight of the week. The rationale is simple, if not entirely scientific. Bathhouses are steamy, crowded, and, horror of horrors, wet. Doctors, or anyone with a big enough hat to look authoritative, claim the humid air opens the pores, inviting the plague to waltz right in. The authorities nod, the church approves, and suddenly the best way to stay healthy is to keep your grime. Medieval public health policy, less lather, more lurking bacteria. But as the bathhouses close, the real party just moves down the street. The tavern, packed every night, stays open for business as usual. Apparently, beer is considered an antiseptic, and proximity to the town's best storyteller offers more protection than any herbal soak. No one seems to worry that the tavern is also humid, crowded, and, thanks to spilled ale and tears, more than a little moist. Logic, it turns out, is a rare and precious commodity. The decision to close the baths sparks an outbreak of finger-pointing. I told you bathhouses were sinful. mutters one churchgoer. I never trusted that much nudity in one place, says another. Meanwhile, the local bathhouse owner tries to protest, waving a copy of an ancient Roman treatise on the health benefits of bathing. Nobody's listening. Everyone's too busy speculating about the last person seen emerging from the now cursed bathhouse doors. Rumor has it she was looking suspiciously healthy, a sure sign of trouble. The effect on daily life is immediate. People scramble for alternatives. Some improvise by heating up a cauldron at home. But it's not the same without the company, or the plausible deniability if anything goes wrong. Others forego washing altogether, comforted by the official seal of approval on their new crusty lifestyle. After all, if the magistrate says dirt is protective, who are you to argue? Meanwhile, the bathhouse itself becomes a sort of haunted house. Children dare each other to sneak inside, convince the papa. Ghosts of the overwashed now linger in the steam pipes. Adults glance over their shoulders as they pass, half expecting to catch the scent of illicit lavender oil or, worse, run into the neighborhood snitch ready to report anyone with a suspiciously shiny forehead. Gossip thrives in the absence of real news. Was it the bathhouse that brought the plague? Or was it the peddler from out of town? Did someone curse the water? Or did the local healer just run out of rosemary? As always, answers are scarce, but opinions are everywhere. When the blacksmith's wife comes down with a cough, people shake their heads and say, "Shouldn't have washed last week. She was asking for it." You can't make this up. In the medieval bathhouse blame game, hygiene loses and hysteria wins. The clean are condemned, the dirty are celebrated, and the only thing flowing freely is ale at the tavern. It's a public health strategy as effective as it is absurd. And you're just trying to keep your pores and your reputation intact. You're not bathing, but the livestock get an annual dunking, which raises some awkward questions about priorities and the definition of pet-friendly. Let's set the scene. Your ankle, deep in mud, squinting against the wind, and watching as your neighbor's cow is herded with surprising reverence down to the river for her big yearly wash. It's not that anyone's worried about Bessie's self-esteem or her social life. It's just practical. A clean coat helps keep away parasites, and, more importantly, nobody wants to churn butter that tastes faintly of barnyard funk. If the cow gets cleaned, it's only because the cheese depends on it. The process is a community event. Kids line the riverbank, snickering and daring each other to touch the cow's tail. The adults get serious. There's rope, teamwork, and a highly coordinated effort to get all four legs into the water at once. There's more screaming than you'd expect, and at least one farmer is nearly trampled every year. Bessie herself looks deeply unimpressed, staring at the onlookers with the weary gaze of someone who knows she'll be dirtier than ever by nightfall. For a brief, shining moment, she's the cleanest creature for miles. Meanwhile, you stand on the shore, layered in last month's tunic, trying not to look envious. The cow's bathwater is probably cleaner than what you'd fetch for yourself, but good luck convincing anyone you deserve a turn. Medieval priorities are clear. If you're not producing milk, wool, or something to barter at market, you're on your own. The family dog might get a rinse if he falls into a puddle, but that's accidental, not policy. Chickens are on a strict dirt-only regime. After the dunking, the cow is paraded back through town. Villagers nod, approving. "She'll give good milk this year," says the old woman with the best gossip. "Wish I could say the same about young Thomas. Heard he was seen with a wet face on Sunday. Strange boy." The social hierarchy is simple. Cow, sheep, goat, and then, much further down, you, noble in spirit, but perpetually crusty. This animal bathing tradition isn't just for appearances. A shiny coat is proof that you take good care of your property. If your livestock look better than your neighbor's, it's a status symbol. If you look better than your neighbor's livestock, though, expect a visit from the priest or a stern talking to about vanity. The idea of giving yourself the same attention as your cow is, frankly, laughable. You think you're better than Bessie? Your mother teases, half joking, half serious. You want someone to haul you down to the river and scrub you with a brush. Don't even get started on the horses. Nobles' steeds are regularly brushed, rinsed, and even perfumed for special occasions. The village children marvel at their shiny manes, secretly wondering if, in their next life, they'll come back as someone's prized palfrey. The family pig gets a quick rinse before the annual fair. Even the cart mule has better odds of a full-body soak than you do. And yet, somehow, nobody seems bitter. There's a rough logic at work. Animals need to stay healthy, and a little water won't hurt their prospects. You need to survive the winter, avoid catching the plague, and, above all, keep your paws heroically clogged. Besides, the idea of stripping down and jumping into the river is enough to make even the bravest soul shiver. It's one thing to be clean, it's another to risk a scandal. You can't make this up. In the medieval world, you might envy your own cow's bath, but you'll just have to settle for living vicariously through her annual spa day. After all, she'll be dirty again by supper, and you, at least, will never risk being accused of outshining the livestock. There's a scientific point at which you can no longer smell yourself. The good news. So can't anyone else. The bad news. This takes about 3 weeks, and you have to live through every moment of it. At first, it's almost unbearable. You wake up each morning marinating in your own medieval funk, caught somewhere between damp barn and day-old onion soup. Your tunic has developed a personality. Your socks stand up by themselves. And even the family goat occasionally sneezes in your direction. You catch the occasional whiff as you turn your head. Something earthy, something mysterious, something you'd rather not name. The transition to nose blindness is a rite of passage, a gradual adaptation that separates the seasoned survivors from the newly crusty. For the first few days, you try holding your breath. You stuff wildflowers under your pillow, dab vinegar on your wrists, and breathe through your mouth like a visiting nobleman. It helps. Slightly. Mostly, it just gives your breath a tang that matches the rest of you. By the end of week 1, you've started blaming others. Must be the neighbors, you think, eyeing the blank, apothecary's apprentice, or the stable boy with equal suspicion. You subtly edge away from anyone who looks too relaxed. You wonder if they're nose-blind already, or if they're just pretending out of politeness, a rare commodity in a town that considers gossip a competitive sport. Week 2 arrives, and your senses have started their retreat. Smells become background noise, like the constant hum of church bells or the gentle clatter of goats knocking over your firewood. The only time you're reminded of your aromatic presence is when a stranger passes through, pinching their nose and whispering about village character. Your friends seem less judgmental. Maybe you all smell the same. Maybe you've reached a new equilibrium. Maybe you think optimistically you're free. But week 3 is where the real magic happens. Your nose has officially thrown in the towel. You could be carrying a cheese wheel under your arm and wouldn't notice. Your bedding is earthy. Your cloak is robust. And your hair has adopted a natural herbal bouquet courtesy of 3 weeks' worth of open-air living. When someone says, "You smell just like home," It's actually a compliment, sort of. At this point, even the town's dogs accept you as one of their own. The flies don't bother you. The cat curls up on your lap without flinching. The local healer offers a pouch of dried mint for luck, but you suspect it's just her way of coping. The truth is, you've adapted. You're nose-blind, immune to your own stench, and honestly, a little proud of it. It's a strange form of social harmony. Nobody apologizes for their scent. You greet your neighbors, huddle together for warmth, and lean in close during market day negotiations. If someone new moves to town, a clean-faced merchant perhaps, they suffer visibly, eyes watering and lips pressed tight. You share a knowing smile with your fellow villagers, remembering the days before your own conversion to the Church of Can't Smell, Don't Care. There are benefits to this survival superpower. You no longer worry about personal hygiene. You focus on bigger problems, like not starving, not freezing, and not catching whatever mysterious ailment is currently circulating. You save your precious energy for tasks that matter, like patching your tunic or arguing with the baker about last week's bread. The smell of survival becomes a badge of honor, a sign that you've weathered the worst and come out, if not fresh, at least resilient. You can't make this up. In a world without soap, deodorant, or any hope of a scented candle, becoming nose-blind is both a mercy and a necessity. So you embrace the new normal, proud to be part of the great, unwashed human tapestry. Because in medieval Europe, if you can't beat the stink, at least you don't have to smell it anymore. Dating is tricky when everyone smells like an old cheese wheel. Love is blind, and, apparently, has no sense of smell. Welcome to medieval courtship, where romance is a test of endurance, and attraction is less about sparkling eyes and more about tolerating each other's personal cloud. You spot your crush across the market square, her hair tangled but artfully concealed beneath a kerchief, her cheeks ruddy from the cold and possibly from a mild rash. She catches your gaze and offers a shy smile. You grin back, hoping she can't see the dirt under your nails. Or worse, smell your tunic from a distance. In a world where bathing is a health hazard, first impressions are filtered through several layers of grime, wool, and optimistic hope. There's no perfume, no deodorant, no scented lotion to mask the fact that you've spent all morning in a stable. Instead, you offer small tokens, a sprig of rosemary for her apron, a handful of wildflowers plucked from the churchyard after the cows have left. If you're truly smitten, you might trade combs, a gesture that says, "I trust you with my lice and my heart." Courtship rituals adapt. Lovers sneak off for a stroll, not to a moonlit stream, too risky, open water means open pores, but to the safety of the cabbage patch or the hayloft, where the ambient aroma guarantees privacy. You whisper sweet nothings, careful to angle your breath away. And maybe, if you're lucky, you hold hands, through mittens, just to be safe. Kissing is reserved for only the most daring and congested couples. After all, why risk passing on both affection and whatever mystery rash you're sporting this season? Parents aren't concerned with romance, but with alliances. They evaluate suitors by the size of their bread loaves, not the brightness of their smiles. Still, some things are universal. You catch your beloved's eye in church, you share a bench at the feast, you swap awkward glances over the pottage bowl. There's a secret language to medieval flirting. An extra chunk of bread, a wink over the ale, a nudge in the line for confession. If she returns your smile after 3 days, without rain, it's true love. Of course, scent plays a role in the dance of attraction. You learn to recognize your sweetheart's signature aroma, perhaps a hint of wild thyme, a lingering scent of sheep, or just a reassuring undertone of "not the worst I've ever smelled." If the village gossips claim she's too clean, you defend her honor with stories of her impressive mud pie technique or her dedication to avoiding the river. True devotion means finding beauty, or at least comfort, in each other's earthiness. Weddings themselves are feats of olfactory endurance. Everyone packs into the church, the air thick with incense, sweat, and the subtle notes of celebratory goat. The newlyweds exchange vows, hands trembling, voices strong, and the whole village cheers, partly out of joy, partly out of relief that someone else is finally responsible for sharing their laundry pile. The wedding night is less about passion and more about negotiating who gets the least lumpy side of the straw, mattress, and whether it's worth attempting a discreet wipe down with a borrowed cloth. But if you listen, really listen, you'll hear the laughter beneath it all, the jokes about muddy boots, the gentle teasing over wild hair, the promises to share not just bread, but also the good comb. There's a quiet resilience in medieval romance, a sense that love isn't about perfection but about persistence. You find someone whose scent you don't mind waking up to, whose touch you crave even when the fire goes out and the wind howls through the thatch. You can't make this up. In a time when everyone is equally funky, love finds a way. Against all odds and all odors, hearts still flutter, hands still find each other, and life goes on, aromatic, ridiculous, and completely unforgettable. Doctors debate. Is it bad air, bad luck, or bad habits? All agree, don't wash. You never know what's floating in the vapors. In the plague years, nobody really knows what causes disease, but everyone has an opinion, and most of them sound suspiciously like ways to avoid housework. You shuffle down to the town square with a cough and a mysterious itch, and the self-appointed medical experts are already holding court. It's the miasma, one insists, waving a bundle of wilted herbs, evil airs drifting in from the marshes. Another shakes his head, blaming the alignment of Mars, and a suspicious-looking toad found near the bakery. The favorite explanation is miasma, the belief that invisible clouds of bad air or night vapors drift through the streets, bringing illness to anyone foolish enough to breathe in too deeply, or, heaven forbid, open their windows. In fact, half the village now stuffs rags soaked in vinegar up their noses, clutches bundles of dried sage, and sleeps with garlic strung over the door. You catch a whiff and wonder if you're being cured or simply marinated. Of course, not everyone buys into miasma. Some believe disease is a punishment for bad behavior, lying, stealing, or, worst of all, neglecting church on Sunday. The village priest sees every sneeze as a sign from above. Repent, lest the boils find you next. It's a great incentive to confess everything, including that one time you pinched an extra turnip at market. If you're extra unlucky, you get the double curse. You caught the miasma because you're a sinner. Next time, pray harder and close your pores. Magic has its followers, too. The wise woman down the lane claims she can see illness shimmering in the air, like a heat haze of doom. For a price, usually a chicken or your last candle, she'll wave a charm over your head, burn some mysterious roots, and mutter words that sound suspiciously like her shopping list. It's the evil eye, she warns, staring pointedly at your neighbor. Suddenly, everyone's tying blue ribbons to their doors and casting suspicious glances at the blacksmith's cat. But the real genius of medieval disease theory is its flexibility. Did you get sick after walking by the mill? Must have been the miller's fault, or maybe it was that draft you felt, or the wrong kind of cloud. If you start feeling better, it's thanks to the leeches, the herbal compress, or the priest's prayers. Never the fact that you just survived. If you get worse, well, You clearly didn't follow the advice closely enough. You didn't gargle with vinegar every hour. No wonder your rash has developed a personality. One thing unites all schools of thought. Bathing is bad news. Water is a known agent of evil, a portal for whatever malicious spirits or floating humors are currently making the rounds. Opening your pores with hot water is basically sending a written invitation to the Black Death. The best advice, repeated by doctors, clergy, and grandmothers alike, is to stay dry, stay dirty, and let your personal crust serve as both shield and scapegoat. Doctors, when consulted, deliver their wisdom with maximum confidence and minimum actual knowledge. They'll recommend everything from fasting to bleeding, from smelling flowers to drinking wine, sometimes all in the same afternoon. They might carry a plague posy, a fancy nosegay, to keep the miasma at bay, but you notice they don't mind charging double for house calls. If you recover, you're a walking miracle. If not, you become a cautionary tale about washing behind your ears. You can't make this up. In a world where science is rumor, logic is flexible, and survival is mostly a matter of luck, the one thing everyone agrees on is don't mess with the vapors. So you soldier on, protected by your own superstition, your neighbor's garlic, and enough wishful thinking to fill a cauldron. Because in the Middle Ages, ignorance isn't just bliss. It's the closest thing to a medical plan you've got. Years go by, and the population is smaller, but statistically dirtier. Bathhouses rot, new customs form, and the post-plague world is united by one thing: the stench. At first, you expect things to snap back to normal. Surely, once the worst of the plague passes, people will rush back to the river, the bathhouse, or at least the nearest rain barrel. But habits, especially medieval ones, die hard. The town's old public bath, once the site of gossip and communal foot-soaking, is now home to rats, cobwebs, and the distinct aroma of long-term neglect. Someone tried to open the doors last spring, but the sight and smell inside sent even the hardiest farmer running for fresh air. Instead, cleanliness is reinvented. Dry washing becomes all the rage, meaning, of course, that you vigorously rub yourself with a rough cloth and declare victory over dirt. Soap is used only by the reckless or the terminally ill, and even then, only in secret. Old wives' tales multiply. Don't touch water on a Thursday. Avoid puddles after sunset. If you must wash, do it with ale. This one remains suspiciously popular. New customs spring up. Instead of offering guests a towel, you hand them a sprig of rosemary to wave under their nose. Weddings are preceded by the blessing of the boots, where everyone is reminded to keep their shoes on, out of respect, of course, but also to prevent surprise whiffs of ancestral feet. Children are raised on cautionary tales: the last bath, the dangerous soak, and, most terrifying of all, the girl who washed her hair and disappeared. If you ask for a comb, you get a knowing look and a lecture on the virtues of natural oils. Fashion adapts. Layers become the status symbol of the age, not silk or velvet. But how many garments you can stack without fainting from the heat? Everyone claims their tunic is protective, their cloak is blessed, and the crusty outer layer is the mark of wisdom. The only thing thicker than your clothing is the collective sense of pride in having survived a plague by doing as little laundry as humanly possible. Scent, once a matter of taste, is now a point of local pride. Villages develop their own aromatic identity. We're earthy, one town boasts. We're robust, says another. The neighboring hamlet is just known as Pungent Hollow. Travelers learn to navigate by nose. Ah, I must be close to Laverum. Smells like onions and old ambition. If someone moves in with a whiff of rosewater, they're viewed with deep suspicion and given a week to acclimate. Personal space evolves too. People develop the art of subtle distancing, not because of modern etiquette, but because sometimes you just need to breathe. A new form of greeting emerges, the two-step wave, best performed upwind. It's possible to spot an out-of-toner from 50 paces by the way they recoil at the local bouquet. Even medicine adjusts. The wise woman's remedies now include garlic necklaces and sage bundles meant less for healing and more for masking unpleasant truths. The doctor prescribes rest and strong willpower, not a bath. Not ever. If you really want to impress your peers, you develop a story about how your great-uncle survived the plague by never once removing his socks. And maybe, just maybe, you'll make it into local legend. You can't make this up. When nobody bathes, society doesn't collapse. It just gets more inventive, more layered, and much, much smellier. The past is a different country, and in post-plague Europe, it's a country where the strongest scent wins. As you drift off to sleep, wrapped in your own medieval layers, remember, history is written by the survivors, but it's smelled by everyone else. It'll be generations before anyone trusts a bath again. But one day, someone will invent the modern shower, and history will finally take a much-needed rinse. At first, the wounds of the plague years are slow to heal. In village after village, public baths remain shuttered, windows boarded over as if the scent of cleanliness itself could invite disaster. Children grow up hearing stories of the last bath, part cautionary tale, part horror legend. Old-timers shake their heads when someone suggests a communal soak. That's how the trouble started, they mutter, clutching their tunics with an extra layer of pride and at least two of filth. And so, for centuries, Europe leans into dirt as a cultural default. Cleanliness is suspicious. Water is for brewing and cooking, and personal hygiene means combing out the bigger chunks before a festival. If someone's skin actually shines, it's assumed they've either made a deal with the devil or are about to die of some mysterious, waterborne illness. Instead of fresh, the highest compliment you can give is hearty or resilient, ideally followed by, can work all day in the sun without fainting. But history, like bathwater, is always swirling. Slowly, the world changes. Science inches forward. Doctors start talking about germs, tiny, invisible monsters that live not just in bad air, but in, well, everything. Eventually, someone has the radical idea that maybe, just maybe, washing could keep you alive instead of sending you straight to the next plague pit. Soap is reintroduced as a miracle cure, and this time it comes with fewer side effects and hopefully fewer teeth-melting additives. The bath makes a cautious comeback, tiptoeing into polite society like a scandalous rumor at a church supper. First, it's the wealthy who dare to dabble, importing porcelain tubs from distant lands, boasting about their water closets and fancy indoor plumbing. Servants, somewhat alarmed, are tasked with filling and emptying these extravagant contraptions. The middle class follows, buying into the dream of modern convenience. And soon enough, it's no longer a crime to be seen with soap. And then, sometime in the 19th century, someone has a eureka moment that changes everything. What if, instead of stewing in the same water, we could stand under fresh water and let the grime run right off? The shower is born, not all at once, of course. Early versions are clunky, hand-pumped affairs, more terrifying than soothing. But people adapt. The idea of water falling from above, washing away the literal and metaphorical baggage of the past, is too good to resist. Word spreads. There's a new way to get clean, And it doesn't require a 6-hour boiling session, a wrestling match with a neighbor for tub rights, or a side-eye from the local priest. Soon, the world smells different. Cities install public baths and showers, factories mass-produce scented soaps, and advertisements promise everything from eternal youth to romantic success. Just by standing under a gentle spray, clean skin becomes a sign of health, modernity, and, eventually, sex appeal. Parents no longer warn their children about the dangers of open pores. Now, they sold them for skipping their evening scrub. The new rituals take hold. Singing in the shower replaces the communal market chorus. The lingering fear of water is replaced by arguments over hot water bills and the best shampoo for curly hair. Where once the greatest horror was a suspiciously shiny forehead, now it's the dreaded bad hair day. You can't make this up. After centuries of dirt, superstition, and creative excuses, humanity comes full circle, rediscovering the simple, ridiculous joy of being clean. So next time you step under a warm shower, give a grateful nod to the ghosts of history. They walked so you could wash. Desperate for salvation, the townsfolk turn to the church for answers. The local priest swings his incense, sprinkles holy water on the crowd, and mutters prayers against the plague. But when someone suggests a holy bath, he recoils as if you'd asked him to wash the relics. Apparently a sprinkle's fine, just don't get any bright ideas about full-body immersion. Miracles, yes. Hygiene, never. Faith becomes the town's most reliable medicine. As the plague tightens its grip, the church offers the only comfort most people know: ritual, routine, and the sweet reassurance that, with enough prayers and blessed drops, even the unclean might survive another season. Every Sunday, the villagers gather in the shadowy nave, clutching wilted posies and whispering names of loved ones who need divine intervention, or at least an excuse to avoid the next leeching session. The priest is a busy man. He's at the sickbed in the morning, chanting over the dying by noon, and presiding over a queue of anxious parishioners by twilight. Incense fills the air, masking some of the less saintly aromas. Holy water is everywhere, splashed on doors, flicked onto foreheads, even added to soup for that extra spiritual kick. If it's blessed, it must be working, right? But don't confuse these sacred sprinkles with actual bathing. Suggest using extra holy water to wash away a few layers of grime, and you'll get a look of shock so intense it might itself qualify as a minor miracle. The body is a vessel, the priest warns, and vessels must be kept humble. Too much water, even of the blessed kind, is a slippery slope toward vanity, not virtue. Medieval logic is simple. God helps those who help themselves by staying dirty. Still, there's no shortage of religious remedies on offer. Feeling a fever coming on? Kiss a relic and drink a few sips of water that passed near St. Hubert's shin bone. Got a cough? Wrap yourself in a scarf blessed by the bishop. Never mind if the bishop's scarf smells like last season's onions. Protection is protection. For real emergencies, the church offers processions, singing, and the ceremonial ringing of bells, sometimes at ungodly hours, to ward off evil spirits, bad air, and, ironically, any hope of sleep. In the market, vendors sell amulets and crosses, each promising to keep the plague at bay. Some ambitious types start selling vials labeled Essence of Jordan, bottled tap water with a better origin story. The wise woman down the lane mixes up saintly potions using holy water, dried lavender, and whatever herbs haven't yet been trampled by desperate villagers. As for soap, it remains firmly in the realm of risky innovation, best avoided if you're hoping to avoid suspicion and accidental exorcisms. Children quickly learn that cleanliness is not next to godliness. They're doused with drops at every blessing, but warned against dipping so much as a toe into the pond on church grounds. The one time little Edith comes home from a rainstorm cleaner than usual. Her mother marches her straight to the chapel for a second helping of sacred dust, just to be sure she hasn't washed away her blessings. Meanwhile, stories circulate about saints who went decades without bathing, their holiness proven by their unwavering commitment to remaining crusty. They smelled like devotion. The priest intones, to murmurs of approval from the congregation, "Never mind the flies gathering around the altar. You can't make this up." In a world desperate for protection, people trust the priest's droplets more than a tubful of water. Salvation is measured in sprinkles, faith in the flick of a wrist, and hygiene is, as always, a matter for another era. So you bow your head, close your eyes, and wait for the next blessing, knowing that the only thing less likely than a holy bath is a change in church policy. Charms and miracle cures hit the market. Snake oil salesmen, hawk-dried frog legs, anti-bath amulets, and tiny pouches of questionable herbs to pin inside your unwashed shirt. Apothecaries peddle pills promising to seal the pores or drive away the plague, all for the price of a week's bread. And somehow, nobody thinks to sell plain old soap. You shuffle through the bustling medieval market, eyes darting past barrels of turnips and the suspiciously energetic rat population, on the hunt for anything that might keep you breathing a little longer. The sellers have caught on. In an age when everyone's scared of water, and even more scared of what's floating in it, there's a fortune to be made convincing people that hygiene is dangerous and superstition is science. First, the quacks. They set up shop on every corner, sporting feathered hats and voices loud enough to drown out the church bells. Their wares are eclectic and proudly untested. Dried lizard tails, for luck, bits of ribbon blessed by someone's cousin, and bottles labelled vapor repellent that smell like a mix of garlic and last week's soup. They assure you it's just what the doctor ordered. Never mind that the doctor is actually a former pig herder with a flair for dramatic hand gestures. The anti-bath amulets are all the rage, fashioned from tin, bone, or the occasional shiny stone. They're said to repel the humours and protect your pores from evil spirits, provided you never remove them, never wash them, and preferably never look at them in direct sunlight. If you can't afford an amulet, don't worry. For a smaller fee, you can buy a baggie of herbs to sew inside your tunic, guaranteed to keep both plague and neighbours at arm's length. Then there are the no-bathing pills, tiny pellets, usually made from ground-up mystery roots and a sprinkle of hope. Swallow one every morning, and your pores will close tighter than a monastery door. Or so the jingle goes. The pills taste terrible, but with demand sky-high, nobody cares. Some enterprising apothecaries even introduce special formulas for children, pets, and elderly uncles with suspiciously shiny skin. Testimonials abound. My rash vanished. I haven't coughed in a week. My neighbour stopped talking to me. Bliss. You'd think someone would market soap, just for old time's sake. But no, soap is dangerous, modern, and vaguely heretical. The sellers know their audience. Why risk being seen as a foreign sympathizer, or, worse, a reckless innovator? Better to play it safe with potions and prayers. The closest you get is a cleansing powder, which is really just sand in a fancy pouch. Rub vigorously, the seller instructs, and never ever add water. At the high end, wealthy clients seek out specialists, mysterious foreigners with jars of perfumed oils and secret knowledge from the East. These remedies cost a fortune, come with unpronounceable ingredients, and are often accompanied by ritual chanting or an aggressive massage with a wooden spoon. You leave smelling like a spice market, slightly bruised and still as dirty as when you arrived. In the shadow of the apothecary's stall, the wise woman glares at the commotion. Her cures are simple: garlic in your pocket, vinegar for your feet, and a stern warning not to listen to men with feathered hats. But business is slow. The crowd wants magic, not common sense. As you head home, purse a little lighter and shirt a little heavier with amulets, you realize that fear makes fools of everyone. The more complicated the cure, the more likely it is to sell. Seal your pores, wear your amulet, and never bathe again, the quacks proclaim. You nod, clutch your purchases, and wonder if you've just spent your week's wages on peace of mind, or a ticket to the next round of plague roulette. You can't make this up. In a world terrified of soap, medieval marketing finds a way. And in the end, the only thing dirtier than your skin is the competition for your last coin. Forget Paris or Milan. This year's hot look is maximum coverage, minimum laundering. Fashion means piling on every rag you own. Tunics, cloaks, scarves, all to keep those evil airs at bay. It's like medieval couture designed by a hoarder with a fear of water. Bonus points if your outfit stands up by itself. You wake up each morning and the first decision isn't what color to wear. They're all some shade of mud. But how many layers you can get away with before you lose the ability to bend your arms? In plague time, dressing for success means sealing every possible pore and crevice under a protective mountain of cloth. No one is here to see your figure anyway. The new aesthetic is shapeless but safe, accessorized by an air of cautious resignation. Tunics go on first, then another tunic, just in case the first one lets through a draft of bad luck. Cloaks, preferably the heaviest you own, are next, ideal for warding off chills, suspicious looks, and any unexpected rain of holy water. Scarves are wrapped around neck, nose, and sometimes ears, because you never know where the miasma might be lurking. Gloves, hats, and the occasional pair of socks over your hands complete the ensemble. If you're not sweating by the time you step outside, you're doing it wrong. The goal isn't just warmth, it's survival. The prevailing theory is that every extra layer of fabric is a layer of defense against the plague. More rags, less risk becomes the motto whispered over morning porridge. You eye your neighbors, counting tunics the way modern people count likes on social media. The blacksmith's wife is rumored to have reached 12. The priest, not to be outdone, now wears his vestments over his everyday clothes, just in case. But with each added layer comes new challenges. Your movement is limited. Try running from a wild pig or a group of overzealous quacks, and you'll look like a scarecrow caught in a windstorm. Sitting down is a project. Standing up even more so. Fashion is pain, the village healer says, shaking her head as she tries to wrap a bandage over your fifth tunic. If you drop something, it's dead to you. Bending over is an extreme sport. Laundry, of course, is out of the question. Nobody's risking their health just to wash a tunic. The unspoken agreement is that the outer layer absorbs the worst of it. And when it finally gets too crusty, you just retire it to the emergency-only pile and rotate in something slightly less hazardous. Odd stains become badges of honor, proof that you've survived yet another season. Patterns develop not from fabric dye but from old soup spills, goat encounters, and mysterious medieval accidents best left unexplained. Hats are a whole category unto themselves. Wide-brimmed, floppy, feathered, or fur-lined. A good hat signals both style and paranoia. Keeps the bad air out, the wise men say, while tucking extra sage inside the brim for good luck. If your hat is sturdy enough to double as a small shield, you're ready for anything. In this era, Fashion shows are impromptu gatherings at the market, where villagers eye each other's get-ups with a mixture of envy and pity. Nice layering, Agnes. Did you sleep in that? The answer is always yes. Undressing is reserved for special occasions, like weddings or exorcisms. You can't make this up. Medieval plague. Time fashion isn't about looking good. It's about looking like you've tried everything to avoid the Grim Reaper's next visit. So layer up, shuffle out, and take pride in your ambulatory fortress of rags. Because nothing says survivor like an outfit that could stop a cart. Can't risk a real bath? Just waft some herbs over your body and call it a day. Lavender, rosemary, sage. Sure, you smell like a medieval pizza. But people swear it's enough to scare off both the plague and the local mosquito population. And if you actually touch water, expect a neighborly intervention. You wake up in the morning, contemplate your filth, and realize the river is off limits. Again, the town crier just shouted about dangerous paws. Your mother is reinforcing the ban, and you know better than to argue with a superstition that's kept half the village alive, or at least busy. Instead, you reach for your trusty bunch of herbs, plucked fresh from the communal patch, or, if you're fancy, traded at the market for a spare egg and a promise to never bathe again. Medieval hygiene is all about the power of plants. Everyone has a favorite. Rosemary for courage, sage for wisdom, lavender for smelling less like despair. You bundle them together, tie them up with twine, and get to work, gently beating yourself with a fragrant bouquet in a ritual that's equal parts self-care and self-flagellation. The official name is herbal fumigation, but it looks a lot like a desperate attempt to camouflage yourself from both disease and disapproval. The method is straightforward. Stand in a sunbeam, take a deep breath, and waft. Brush your hair with thyme sprigs. Stuff your sleeves with mint, or just rub marjoram under your arms and call it deodorant. The neighbors will nod approvingly. They can smell you coming and, crucially, you don't smell like fear or fresh laundry, which would be much more alarming. Of course, everyone has advice. The village healer swears by a twice-daily herb sweep, preferably while chanting nonsense and spinning counterclockwise. The apothecary insists on custom blends. Try my special blend, only 3 chickens, while the wise woman rolls her eyes and offers a sprig of rue with a warning not to get any funny ideas about water. There are rumors about a nobleman who once used imported basil, but he was shunned for being too exotic. Best to stick with local flavors. Earthy, pungent, slightly bitter, just like the family stew. Children get their own versions, usually a head wreath of dandelions or a pocket full of wild garlic that guarantees both good health and absolute solitude on the playground. Elders remember when herbal washing was reserved for holy days and high fevers. But these days, every day is a holiday for someone trying to avoid the plague. Sometimes, you'll see a friend so committed to herbal hygiene that they walk around trailing a visible green aura. Their homes are smoky with dried sage, the windowsills crowded with wilting bouquets. If you visit, you're offered a cleansing fan of fern leaves to dust yourself off before sitting on the bench, which hasn't seen soap since the last solar eclipse. But beware the accidental herb overdue. Too much rosemary, and you'll clear the room of both disease and conversation. Too much wild garlic, and the priest will swing extra incense in your direction at Mass. There's a delicate balance to be struck. Enough scent to ward off the evils of the day, not so much that you attract every bee for 3 miles. And whatever you do, don't actually dip your herbs in water and use them like a bath brush. That's a bridge too far. You might as well announce your tempting fate. inviting the wrath of every ancestor, and risking a midnight visit from the neighborhood watch, armed with nothing but side-eye and cautionary tales. You can't make this up. In a world where water is feared and dirt is your friend, a bouquet is better than a bath. You survive on the promise of plants, a prayer to St. Lavender, and the hope that your next herbal wave is just strong enough to fool the plague, and maybe even yourself. So tonight, as you settle into your clean bed, maybe under soft sheets, maybe with a whirring fan, definitely nowhere near a goat, take a deep, grateful breath. You're not fighting off miasma. You're not clutching a protective layer of filth like a medieval security blanket. And the only thing lurking in your shower is probably an empty bottle of shampoo. Remember, the people of the plague years weren't dirty because they wanted to be. They were scared, desperate, and doing what they thought would keep themselves and their loved ones safe. For them, survival meant saying no to the bath, yes to the grime, and clinging to every odd belief, superstition, and doctor's warning that the times could throw at them. It was a world where even good intentions sometimes came with a side of athlete's foot. So the next time you step into a hot shower, maybe whisper a quick thank you to the ancestors who endured lice, leeches, and the horror of being blamed for actually using soap. Our modern world isn't perfect, but at least we can wash off the day without risking an exorcism or neighborhood scandal. Because history, as gross and baffling as it sometimes is, proves something. People are stubborn, hopeful,